Welcome back, everybody, to another exciting episode of Aaron's Opinion, the podcast for blind people, where we speak about critical issues in the blindness community and all other issues from across the universe and galaxy. Today, this morning, afternoon, evening, we're joined by Jennifer Beilis, who has been wanting to come to the show for a very, very long time. You have been sticking to this show like honey on baklava. You have not let up. You've been the most positive and the most aggressive guest, and I mean that in a good way. You have really wanted to come talk to me about your life. As I've come to understand, you learned American Sign Language, you teach a course at a community college, you want to be employed, and overall you want to share your life story with my global audience. So I will certainly mute my microphone in a minute, but first I have to ask you a question. And to our other friend in the studio, Aaron K., as I say, please remain muted, and at the end, I will unlock your microphone too at the end. But until then, I'll mute my audio just after I ask this one question. Who is Jennifer Beilis? Tell us everything you want me to know, and don't tell me anything you don't want me to repeat. I'll mute my microphone. Go.
Okay. Am I also talking about the books as well, or just audiobook?
About everything. About the books,
okay.
About your life, about ASL, about the everything. Go.
Okay, here we go. Hi, nice to meet everybody. I teach American Sign Language, basic level 1 and 2 in college in New Jersey. And I've also done administration, psychology, and the college level, work with people with disabilities, people with honors, all kinds of levels. And I find that it's so important to take the time out to listen to people, because after this lovely pandemic, nobody knows even how to talk anymore. They play texting on phones and don't even have conversations. So a little bit about me. I have a hearing loss, and as it kept getting more problems from having vertigo, which is called Meniere's, a fancy word for it. And so I decided to go to NYU graduate school, and I hold my master's in education and deafness rehab, and it was extremely difficult to learn, and it also is to teach as well. It's not simple like psychology was easy or something like that, because you're looking directly at the people. It's way, way different. But I enjoy it. My students challenge me. I learn from them, and they learn from me, of course. We're all learning, and we're always learning. We're helping one another. So I decided to publish a book called Here I Am. I'm going to actually get the two books so you can see it. Okay. So this book, it has a blue and basic on a white cover. And then it has a blue butterfly with black in it, and it has the word here, HEARIM is the book by me. And I did it published in 2014. And my thesis, which I say it every day, I still think it's so important. You quote me. People with disabilities can go to school, work, and live in their homes with the proper adaptive devices. As we go on with the show, I'm going to describe what in the world that means. So my book is about like helping people, talking about being a role model for people, for other teachers and staff and students, because most people don't know what hearing loss is about. And I actually presented at my school for Here I Am. I do motivational disability awareness seminars, and I show pictures in the book, and people have like a blurb, and then they learn and write from that. And that's what I wrote about there. Okay. And so I took pictures, and you have to have permission. So basically I'll describe the picture. All right. So I have pictures of Rowan University on here, and it shows pictures on here where they put the school. You had to get permission. And then I was an APO, fraternity, National Fraternity Service. And then I have pictures on West 4th Street of NYU. And so basically you have to get permission for anything you do. Okay. Now the next book, which I published last year, as many of you know, is called Making Positive Changes. I'm going to describe the front cover out loud. It says Making Positive Changes, and I have mountains, and I have trees that are green, and then I have like blue water, and birds and butterflies. And then there's a rainbow, which is red, yellow, and blue, and some more rocks and butterflies and birds. Very relaxing. So there's spaces in the book for you to be able to read and write as well. And it's very important. So for example, there's pictures like of a butterfly with lines. Okay, so it's in the book, so you can write it on your own paper in the book, and you read my examples, and then I want to see what in the world are you learning, growing from my examples, kind of a thing. All right, and then I put pictures in there. I talk about health, diet, exercise, chronic disease, disabilities, motivation. And so that's what I do. And then I put pictures I'll describe out loud. Okay, there's also, I interviewed NAMI, N-A-M-I, if anybody ever heard of them. They are a national mental health organization. That way people can have help with mental health. I talk about that. Relaxation. Okay. Now, I made a comparison picture of me, what I looked like in 2014 and 2025 in my books. Okay, so I am wearing like a pink sweater in one picture, and then the other one has a picture of me in a pink dress and all kinds of jewelry on the necklace. And then the other picture is me in a suit, like a typical teacher look. And 14, and then 25 is a picture of me all dressed up in a pretty dress with flowers. Then I have pictures of, first was Lightning. He was in the other book too. I took pictures of Lightning was a male Sheltie, and he lived to be 15 and a half. And now we have Princess, and she's now 5. And she's a female Sheltie, tricolored. Both of them were and are. In other words, black, white, and brown. Think collie, like they round you up, and she will come. Any noise, anybody's calling my name, she will come and tell me, any kind of noise, the doorbell, or any kind of thing like that. And then in the back of the book, I decided to put resources for all different type of things. I have blind support groups, Canine Companion, ALDA, and HLA, organizations for hard of hearing people, and deaf blind. I have all kinds of beautiful resources, InnoCaption. So I go around the schools and libraries and tell them my whole thing. And so now I did that last year, and this year I met several people a couple months ago, and all of a sudden there was a calling for an audiobook, which I knew zero about, but I wanted to reach a new population. What about the people who can't hold a book in their hands, or they enjoy driving or riding and they want to listen to a book? Or you have people that are blind or low vision, and maybe they want to listen to a book. So you can have people listen and read, or whatever combination there is. So that way, for this book, Making Positive Changes, now I can reach more people. Actually, I'm going to be speaking April 8th to a senior citizen place, not where I live. And the people have a brand new group, and it's about blind and their low vision. I don't know if they're men and women, but the man, Mike, is the leader, and it's not far. And then I'm also going to have a book signing as well, Lose Village, that week as well. And then another one upcoming in June with Tom Zerver. So I enjoy helping people, and I run motivational disability awareness in my classroom, not the long version, but I have the students. These are the population that I have them do for a project. Blind, deafblind, hearing, hard of hearing, and then you have deaf people or deafblind. You have all these categories. So my students learn about how to do it, like tactile ASL, because I'm an ASL teacher, right, in a college level. So they have to know how to feel, get the feeling. They can't just do whatever. They have to put their feelings and their hearts into things. You'd be surprised. So then they put it in the presentations for tactile ASL in their hands and other things, and, different ways of signing. So they're learning from that. And then they have to present all those things about, What is an accommodation? Most people have no idea what in the world it is and how do you get one and how do you enforce it. And it is extremely difficult. You need to do these things way, way in advance. Not like, okay, this job, this school is there. That's not good enough. You have to do these things like 2 months in advance. You can't expect an aide, an interpreter to show up without any notice. We need to do that, find out all the accommodations in advance and making sure that they're appropriate. And you to go to, let's say, the person in charge of the job with disabilities, or let's say in a place of work, in your home. So we made accommodations, and I show that in both books, for different problems that my husband Mark and I have. And it's really important to be able to help other people. And that helps me grow. I've had students say like, so my first semester in the school here, they're like, so how come you're not teaching psychology? It took me a lot of years to think of an answer for her. And the answer was that, that I like it there and that I am helping more people and being able to get through to them.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much. All right. Your answer, that first answer that's a lot, and that's a really good answer. So in case you didn't know, or should I say to kind of, go back and recap a little bit more about my background to kind of tie it all into the first question, right? As I said, my name's Aaron Richmond, and I've had a life where I have had to always advocate for myself, where advocating for accommodations has always been an issue in my own life, I can tell you that, although I'm not living in Maryland now, wherever I do live, before I live here where I am now, I lived in Maryland. And when I was a little boy, about 20 years ago, roughly 20 years ago, my parents had to go to due process with the school system where I lived in Maryland because they refused to educate me and provide a teacher. So you are 101% correct that these types of accommodations are a very specific thing and a very complex thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to be advocated for very aggressively and very properly and very often, and when the child or the student is beginning, when they're very young, not when they're old. You're very right. So my whole life has been about overcoming, in a similar sense to your life. Not obviously not the same, but in a similar vein, in a similar sense. Then I had many issues going through university. I have overcome an enormous amount to get to where I am now. And I basically built Aaron's Opinion to give you a chance to share your knowledge and to give your opinion about life. And I think that's really special and really important because it's important to me to help you share your story because it's really about doing the right thing, providing an opportunity, an avenue, a space, a podcast for someone like you, for someone like anybody to come up and share their story. Not only is it educating the world, but it's simply philosophically doing the right thing. Let me dig into some questions, right? So you understand that when you're blind, you have to have special accommodations.
Yes.
What I do not understand and what I want to learn about is speaking for those or speaking to somebody. If I were to speak to somebody who is deaf, what accommodations, how do accommodations work for someone who's deaf? What accommodations do deaf people need in the education system? How does that really work? What are the key differences? What are the key similarities? Please educate me about it.
Okay, well, first of all, you have several populations that I teach people. First of all, you have lowercase d. That is your hard of hearing, and let's say they're older, or it could be young, like 16, whatever, and lost a hearing or later in life. So you have that population who wants to hear. So some accommodations would be, lip reading possibly. Most of the people who are hard of hearing don't sign. There may be a few that do, but typically not. So they would use a hearing aid, an FM, sit in the front of the classroom, have time and a half on a test. If they need a quiet area, there's a lot of things that they could have. They could have a note taker in the classroom or the workforce or whatever it is that they may need. And accommodations in the home, they could have flashing lights. It's also in the classroom. Think fire alarm. Okay. All these different things are really important. Now, somebody who's capital D deaf, they usually, I don't know, 2 or 3 people out of 1,000 that have something called a cochlear implant. And it's different than hearing aid. They have profound deafness, but remember that group does not want to hear capital big D deaf. So they would not be, most of them would not want, a cochlear implant, but the lowercase d population want to hear is a big difference. Whereas the capital D people, they don't think there's anything wrong with them. And they communicate what's called American Sign Language. And their accommodations is extremely different. So they will have a note taker, and then they will have someone who does full American Sign Language. That's basically the big difference, whereas there's like 50 accommodations to somebody who's hard of hearing. For example, let's say as a professor, my accommodations is way different. We have a deaf professor and we have me in the same department teaching the same thing. And she requires 9,000 miles an hour ASL. She has her 2 interpreters and I have my 2, because half the time the microphones don't work and the people don't know how to talk loud. So anyway, that's why I said I need the interpreter. Or let's say somebody's all the way in the back of the room. Forget it. I don't know what they say. You can't hear them or understand them. So anyway, so my interpreters will be very different. They are mouthing the words slowly so I can lip read whatever so-and-so had to say. And in addition to that, in the workforce, so what's happening is they are signing, but doing it slow at my pace. I don't like it fast. And English is my first language. Whereas, let's say somebody else's, let's say their first language is ASL. So that's what they, know. Really, I don't do anything fast. But anyway, so that's the difference in the workforce. And in the home, somebody could accommodate, for example, flashing lights or a bed shaker to wake them up because they don't hear something. Or if they're hard of hearing or deaf, they do have CapTel phones or clear captions. And I know CapTel is free in the state of New Jersey. It used to only be the low income. I had to wait a lot of years. And they really did replace it after 3 years, my students saw. And that is a phone where you can have captioning on there, not always accurate. You could say, who's this and who's that? Think about on your cell phone about people not being accurate when you're listening or reading. Like, who in the world is that? Kind of a thing. So, and then on the phone, they have inner caption. So let's say people are deaf, so they can read blah, 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 what the hearing people are saying. Same thing for hard of hearing that they can do, so they're not left out as well. So there's a lot of accommodations.
Excellent. Understood. Let's really philosophize about something, Jen, because that's something that I like to do, and I really want to unfold. I'm really going to get under your skin. Okay. By the way, my TVI, my teacher of the visually impaired, also has a cochlear implant. So I know about this a little, but I'm somewhat ignorant about these matters when it comes to this. So that's why I'm appreciative of you, because you're going to help me to be knowledgeable and educate me more about it.
Well, I want to tell you about the book signing. The both of you would really appreciate. There was a man who wrote a book that had absolutely nothing to do with my interest, whatever he wrote about alcohol or whatever.
Right.
Anyways, I really wanted to meet him because I read all the biographies to the book signing last year. So the man was deaf, and I think he was blind and partially deaf or some kind of combination. An older man, older than me, and his wife was there as well, and he had a beautiful German Shepherd to guide him. So they have a lot of new things out there. So for example, he was wearing these glasses. I wanted to be part of the study, but they didn't have the brains to know that people wear prescription eyeglasses, which is really stupid. I think that should be part of the study. So in other words, it'll say the person is wearing blue or go 50 feet south. It'll give you what in the world is in front of you. So that way he had a lot of support. So they have new technology out there. So for an example, if somebody can see something, I would tell them to go to special needs, and they can take the book and they can blow it up. If they can see shadows, they can see. I had that experience at NYU. There was a student who was totally blind, Angela, and she was terrific. And she basically we blew everything up to the size of us. and she was able to see. I mean, I've worked with blind people in different ways, and anyway, so that girl, I mean, this was 20 plus years ago. She came with her husband. They were both blind, and they came all the way to my house in New Jersey from New York. I was pretty impressed. So again, with the proper adaptive devices that people, can function in the classroom, in the workforce, by learning and not feeling sorry for ourselves, which, everybody does from time to time, I'm sure. So they have plenty of other adaptive devices. They have Braille for the blind. They have these things on the floor for the canes. I noticed that in the school. They have, Dragon. So that way everything is read out loud. I teach my students, am I doing this right? Here's the test. So absolutely not. It has to be out loud. Everything has to be out loud. Oh, and here's a new thing for you too to learn. Which I already knew about it, but the college wanted to train me. I didn't know they actually had a whole big training on it. It's called ALLY, ALLY. Did you guys hear of this?
Vaguely. Yes, it's sounding very familiar. And Aaron, who's muted, also is probably saying it sounds familiar to him too. Right.
Because you're a teacher, so this is important. Okay, so what happens is, let's say there's a logo, Rutgers University. So somebody who's blind or can't see, what they're going to do is they're going to write in the caption, the logo says Rutgers University, and then they're going to say black and red logo. So in other words, when somebody who, needs it out loud, they will describe it. So then, for example, when you make your syllabus up, right? And it's like a bunch of headers and everything looks the same. So somebody is either listening out loud or whatever. And it's extremely confusing. So what would happen is they would have to have a header and then they would have to describe everything. That's what I do. I put, I try to be sensitive to each population or each person, wherever it is. And I physically write, this is what this is and this is what that is. So when they're listening to it, of course, if you're saying something private, they better turn it off. When somebody is sharing, there's no reason for them to record that. That would be very unfair. If they're telling a personal life story, turn it off. But so they can record me or whatever, but most of the class is not that much, some talking, but most not. But anyway, but if I had a blind student in the class, in which I had a student who couldn't see color. So he was colorblind, and I would talk about it out loud. It's like a light blue color. And so this is how we do it. And so the other people would learn from that, kind of a thing.
Yes, I definitely have heard of the ALLY thing. If they saw my logo that I have created for Aaron's Opinion, they would see a description of it. Exactly.
Right. That's the newest thing. Anything to make life easier.
Sure. Mm-hmm. So, yes, all excellent. What I really want to know, though, and what I meant before was that I want to philosophize with you further about this, right? So you said that there are basically two main groups of deaf people.
All right.
The deaf with the lowercase d and the deaf with the uppercase D.
Right. And you also have the deaf-blind community. So you have great communities.
Indeed. Why don't you kind of break down for the listener the differences between the fundamental philosophical differences between those three communities, if you could, starting with lowercase d, explaining the fundamental, understanding, capital D, and then deaf-blind, and really break down those three communities. Go ahead.
Do you want me to write it in the box? Do you want me to talk?
I would like you to tell me. Just talk out loud, please. Mm-hmm.
Okay, sure. Okay. So you have lowercase d people. They are hard of hearing, and basically they want to hear, and they could use hearing aids and accommodations. They may use a cochlear implant or not. It depends on the level of hearing loss too. Also, another factor, hearing aids are very, very expensive. 3 years ago, they quoted me $6,500, and then they wanted to go up $1,000 a week. I told them off. I said, "What are you, crazy? I'm a long-term patient. How do you expect anyone to afford $8,000 for hearing aids every 3 years?" So they stuck at the $6,500. Plus an FM can cost a fortune. This time it was included. But the last round, it was like $10,000 for the FM alone. So And a cochlear implant, depending on where you live, like somewhere south, it could be 60, or if you're like around our area, tri-state, it could be like $100,000, absolute fortune. So the problem is that most insurances pay very little or dictate where you can go or how much is covered. So people have to get a loan, or if they qualify for what's called VR in your state. I know in Pennsylvania it's called OVR, in my state, New Jersey, DVR. If they have funding and if you qualify, they may help pay for you to go to school, glasses, hearing aids. That's if you qualify. Remember that word, if they have funding. There's no guarantee. And all these things, are really important because it's very, very expensive. If not, you have to take out a loan to be able to pay for all these things. So that's a lowercase c. They could have had, let's say, a car accident. They could have been born that way. There's a lot of different, it could be, different diseases that can cause hearing loss. Okay. So that would be one population. And then, so I was always very active in a support group called Hearing Loss Association of America. That is all across the board in the United States. They have a national convention every year. I could never afford it. They're very expensive. And, so when they had a virtual one, it was great. It was hot off the press in my deaf culture class a couple of years ago. So anyway, different resources, what's new, what kind of adaptive devices, you can try it out. They have scholarships. They actually have one that's due by May. If you're a high school student with hearing loss, I don't know if it's in New Jersey. I don't know about the other states. You'd have to find out yourself. But they have scholarships and they have newsletters and get-togethers. And then there's another beautiful group called ALDA, ALDA, Association Late Deaf and Adults. And that's also a nice group, but they were always really North Jersey. They're also a national organization, but probably way smaller, but they were very nice in both. They do the same premises, scholarships. I was a recipient back in the day of grad school. Hey, whether it's $500, $200, whatever it is, but it's still an honor to take a scholarship or a grant, to go to school or whatever you're trying to do. So let's say, for example, you're in a hospital, you're in a medical setting. So the person there has no clue how to deal with people with disabilities. So in one of the hospitals recently, they have two different things to share that's new. With hearing aids, they would always have to wear a loop to be looped into whatever their system is in the room. Now they have something when you stand on this carpet and you're looped in talking to that lady or whoever it is. But again, keep in mind, most of them have no clue what you're even talking about or listen if we say something to them. So hopefully that also helps the people hear what in the world do they have to say. That's another important thing. And another new thing is when we had the horrible pandemic, they have two new things. It's like an iPad idea on a pole. And they have 50 languages, and American Sign Language is one of them. Actually, they hire them in Pennsylvania. Why? I don't know. And pick people living in New Jersey or living in whatever state you're living in to work for. But anyway, so let's say there's nobody to talk to. You have a problem, so you can go on your laptop or whatever, or this thing. It's called Marty, M-A-R-T-I. And this is also pretty new for the last couple of years. So these people during the horrible pandemic would have somebody, maybe it's a nurse, maybe it was their friend, family member, they could be able to talk to them. So let's say you want to do physical therapy and you don't speak English and you need sign language or some other language, they can use this as well to be able to communicate with you virtually. So that way you're not being you have to be accommodated in the hospital setting or a medical setting as well.
Cool. Okay. Understood.
And then start talk about the next population.
Please. Yes. And that was a very good answer. So just to recap, right? So just to kind of keep a good summary, because certain listeners around the world are either more knowledgeable, less knowledgeable, or equally knowledgeable. So a lot of times I try to kind of narrate some of the knowledge, and it has nothing to do with you, Jen. It's just because it's good for me to kind of fill in the gaps for the listener if they do in fact struggle slightly to understand every single detail that they may not be familiar. So lowercase d, the people who lose their hearing in life, and the key the key element here is they want to hear. They believe in hearing. That's the key thing. That's the key takeaway. All right.
Right.
Now let's transition to capital D deaf. Go.
Capital D deaf people, they are usually born that way. It can be, let's say, their parents or grandparents are deaf or not at all. You could be, also there's a thing called a coda, a child, a deaf adult, and you could be hearing. That's what a coda could be. All right. So let's say you have a deaf parent and they may use in the middle of the night and they don't have an interpreter, then they may use that child and there's a language barrier. They don't know English. They don't know anything. They don't know, let's say, whatever they speak in Spanish or whatever language. So that way they unfortunately use this child until they can get an interpreter, but it's not like they have one just sitting there. I mean, Spanish is pretty fast, but ASL will take probably a while. So that way, that Marty is a really good idea, you know, if you need help with the registration or whatever they might need. So basically I described the accommodations about them. They don't need to hear. They don't want to hear. It's normal for them. They may use hearing aids. It's up to the individual. They may use a cochlear implant, but usually not because they don't want to hear. There's nothing wrong with them. They function, they drive, they do whatever they want, you know, have a job. But you have to be facing the people. That's important.
Right. And I do want to interject here and say that it sort of reminds me, and I'm not trying to create an analogy, or I am neither trying to create an analogy, nor am I trying to misconstrue or misunderstand. But it almost, when I think of capital D deaf, the way you teach me about it, it reminds me how some blind people, some people who cannot see, would tell you, oh, Jen, I don't need to see. I don't need to fix my eyes. There's nothing wrong with me. I understand it's not the same, but it's sort of similar in my mind, right? What do you think about that? Are there any parallels to the willingness of a capital D deaf not needing to hear to someone being born blind, realizing that there's nothing wrong with being blind and nothing wrong with not seeing? What do you think are the parallels or differences?
Wow, that's very...
Yeah, but tell me,
intelligent question.
Yeah, but tell me what you really think, though. Tell me what you really think. Yeah,
I really think it's up to the individual, the way they're raised and everything. That some parents might raise them, there's nothing wrong with them, you know, that's just normal. Whereas others could look down on their child and they don't know how to communicate. It really depends on how they're raised, too, and who their friends and family are. That's how they first started.
Right. So a lot of it has to do with the parenting, right? And my parents taught me that there's nothing wrong with being blind. It's simply an inconvenience. It's simply just who you are. It just happens to be part of your life, and there's nothing wrong with it. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. And now you are sighted too, right? You're sighted, right? Okay.
Normal.
Well.
Okay. So let's talk about the blind population.
And this is where it starts to get really quite complex. I think the deaf-blind population is a handful, right? That there's a lot to understand there. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was actually watching a Facebook segment the other day. Really amazing. Both of them were deaf and blind, and how do they communicate? For example, somebody's up there giving a speech, and how in the world do they know? How do they feel the audience, if they're laughing, if they like it, they hate it? How do they know? So this interpreter person was doing something like feeling like on their back, like up and down. Okay. So think volume. So if the crowd liked what they did, so they went up. If the crowd thought it stunk, they went down. I thought it was interesting. So then I saw the two people conversing. So that was interesting. But the thing is that they use touch. Okay. So that's an important thing. And go very slow at their own pace, or it could be opposite. They could be fast. I don't know. Everybody is different what they want, how they want to communicate. So for me, if I ever had a deaf-blind person, they would have at all times, they would have to have an aide helping them get around. They would have for accommodations. They may have a dog who's trained. They may have an aide, a cane, all kinds of different things that they may have. If I ever had a student that was deafblind, I would give them 1,000,000 hours to, not just a typical time and a half. That person, that aide, what I always say in the classroom, would have to have a heart of gold to be able to have the patience, be really special to be able to handle that. That's really hard.
Absolutely. I recall that my TVI who's now, I believe, totally blind. I recall that my TV, I had a hearing ear dog when I was a boy, and I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing is
Absolutely.
that when I teach, okay, my hands are over here by my chest. So when I teach Helen Keller the movie, and I have the students do an essay, and they have to look into themselves about Annie Sullivan, and they have to realize that she had all these surgeries, okay, and she was the one who looked within herself to teach Helen being blind, and there's 4 different versions of the movie. I didn't see the kid one, the cartoon one. See all the
Sure, sure.
And so anyway, she has to look within herself. How is she supposed to have patience to teach this person who all they did was give her sugar to make her be quiet, and nobody was teaching her. They enabled her to misbehave and throw everything all over the place and didn't behave and didn't learn anything, didn't communicate. She was deaf and blind. So here came the teacher, said, how is she going to do this? She didn't have the support of Captain, the father. That really upset me, or the brother even. And then she did with the mother. But the thing is, the teacher really needs the parents or grandparents or whoever in the world they are, because when I tutor somebody, I feel like if they're not communicating with that kid, then who are they talking to? Nobody. They're not learning anything. So when I teach something, I do want the parents or whoever, hopefully they learn so that way they can communicate, whatever the language, whatever the barrier might be. So then I have people realizing what I'm talking about, that they have to take the role seriously about how Helen felt the water and how her world became alive, and she understood. And Captain, and who's the father, and the mother and the brother, and then they were able to have a normal life. So she set an example of how other deaf blind people can go to school and be able to learn, kind of a thing. It's so important, no matter what the disability is, to have the adaptive devices or whatever it might be to help you and, to get on your feet, to be able to do things. It's really, like they have a current movie show called One Calls the Heart. Did you ever hear of it?
No.
They have a black girl, and she is blind, and she wants to go to school, and the father is like a preacher, and the mother does baking and does all kinds of things. And so they're afraid, to let her go. And so she went to school for the blind and be independent and learn to read Braille. And I mean, it was set in like a 1900. So then she would be like learning, how to communicate with people. She shouldn't be left out and be included it's a current show on Hallmark. So they
Absolutely.
have plenty of movies about disabilities, about deaf, hard of hearing, or whatever it is. So let's talk a little bit more about the blind accommodation. Okay, they can have a dog that's trained. Actually, I have a really nice story you would appreciate. One year, I was administrator in high school in my area. I was teaching in the college and also helping out. Like, it was on the same level as the teachers, but then, like, if they didn't come on time, they didn't do the things I had to tell them. So anyway, I really liked it. So what happened is, so the day before this happened, there was a German Shepherd, and it was in a dog show, and it was an amazing show. So the next day, this lady, the EMT, she was a trustable student. She wasn't like a kid. And so she had this dog, and I'm like, I just saw you yesterday. And so basically, I don't remember their names. It's like so long ago. So the story really stayed with me. So what happened is she had a speech class, and so she would showing the dog off, so that way the other people can learn that, there's plenty of animals that can learn sign language and also help people. We watched in the basement. I never forgot that, the first floor in the college, about the puppies. You've heard about it, with the dogs for the blind, the canine companion, dog for the blind, hearing loss, or whatever the disability is, and how they rate. Not every puppy is going to make it, but a lot of them do. They're currently asking people now to raise these puppies, like golden retriever. And so we saw it as a class. I made them watch it in a Newark airport. It was really nice about how people had to, learn. The person has to learn and the dog has to learn. You can't just say, here's a dog. They have to be trained, and it's very expensive unless you have some kind of a grant. So that would help them as well to get around. They could possibly have a white cane. They could have Braille. They could have time and a half. Everything has to be out loud. So let's say there's a job, it has to be out loud. The house, so they have devices, or in the classroom, they can record all they want. But if I say, here's a book, here's the thing, that's not matching the accommodation. It has to be read out loud no matter what other people have to say. And then you accommodate in whatever way. So the accommodation must match the disability, and it also has to be affordable. You can't ask a school to spend $1 billion. It has to be a reasonable and customary accommodation. So I can't say, well, the person needs a ramp. The person doesn't have a balance problem, so the accommodation wouldn't be met. It has to match. So if the parent said to me in a nice way, oh, my son or daughter needs, an interpreter, they need to sit in the front. Okay, great. Go to the special services and work it up. I mean, there's plenty of parents who had no clue how to do it. And
this is a big problem.
Yeah, they send me a job coach.
Yeah.
I sent them out first in 1 minute. I said, who in the world are you? And I spend time of my own helping them. I never forgot that. Yeah. So it's really important to figure it out and go out of your way and help.
It's not a matter, I would go beyond and in support of you, I would say it's not a matter of really important. It's critical. It's even further than important. It's critical. And a lot of people do not even know how to advocate. And the other thing is that the accommodation has to be appropriate, as you say. And it has to be, and the student deserves to have this accommodation in the least restrictive way. And that's
I agree. But you also have to keep in mind, Aaron, that there are plenty of people who do not want an accommodation. You have to respect that as well. That's also to be talked about. Because let's say one time I had a student who was losing his vision. And I had no idea what was wrong with him. Why are all these little kids repeating what I'm saying? I had no idea what was wrong with him. He tells me, Mrs. Beilis, in the middle of a psychology midterm, he tells me I have a brain tumor. I'm like, here's this kid, 17 years old. I'm like, oh my God, and he didn't want accommodations. And then he was losing lots of vision. He had some surgery of the occipital lobe. I don't know what it was, but anyway, I felt so bad. I mean, I wanted to give him $1 million, but he didn't want it. So in other words, it's a choice, and you may need it in such and such a class or a job. And then, people change. You may need more help next time. You have to follow up with people. Indeed.
And that's why it's important to be consistent and to be persistent, consistent, and to be knowledgeable about it all. Yeah. So, when we talk in pop culture, and I don't talk about it often, but I'm sure one of the questions that you get a lot, and I'm sure the answer is very almost silly or almost intriguing. So surely you read the story of Coco the gorilla, and that there were a lot of stories about that. So what is the truth about Coco the gorilla? And in your opinion, did Coco the gorilla really use ASL, or was it all just smoke and mirrors? What was intellectually happening there in that case study?
Well, I talk about this every day. I actually had a kid for makeup to look it up. There are animals that can learn ASL. Okay. First of all, a dog. I don't know about cats. I don't have a cat, so I can't say it. But dogs, dolphins, gorillas, monkeys, different species can learn ASL. Again, not every dog or every single one is going to be trained and learn it. There's all different types of people and dog or whatever the animal is. So Coco the gorilla, we had Jane Goodall, who just died recently, and Coco died a couple of years ago too. I believe that he really did learn ASL, and he used the baby, doll and infant, and he showed compassion to the baby kitten. And I believe that he really did know ASL and used sign language to Jane Goodall and whoever else was there. and was a major scientist that we lost. Unfortunately, she was highly intelligent. So I do believe that it was for real that animals can indeed learn sign language and communicate. They may not be able to say hello or something out loud, but they talk to us in other ways. So for example, when we're upset, if you have a dog or whatever animal, they know right away before we even know that something's going on. God forbid somebody's having a seizure, they can have an animal trained what to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely true. Yeah. Yeah. And on top of that, do you think in your heart, do you think that it is when we talk about morality, and I could talk about it till the cow comes home, and that's not what I'm going to do today. But what I will ask you is, so Jen, in your professional opinion, was it moral or immoral to teach that particular gorilla ASL? How do you interpret or extrapolate the morality out of teaching an animal ASL? What do you really think?
I think it's a good thing. There's no harm in doing it at all. I mean, it can like help with science.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's great that some animals can communicate. Because
Yeah.
also keep in mind, let's say somebody had a stroke and it affected them. But sometimes through, let's say, like, you being a language teacher, sometimes through singing or other languages, memory, or an animal may get through to someone. Let's say they have autism, they had different medical, so there may be other ways of getting through to the brain as well.
Right, right. So it's almost another way of transcending our thoughts as a species. In other words, that's what you would say. It's almost another way of communication completely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like one time I was doing a class at the developmentally delayed. It was a fun class. Laughter is the best medicine in the college. It was non-credit. And one of my other hard students, he couldn't talk, walk. He couldn't do anything as far as I was concerned. And when those 8 A's left the room, that was really hard for me. I wanted these people to laugh, and I'm like, well, how do I get through to somebody who couldn't talk or do anything as far as I was concerned? So what I decided to do was draw either on the board or on paper and try to relay a concept. I mean, I think he was able to hear, but he had the Winarkey's area. It was affected. He was a young man in his 20s or 30s, and he had a stroke. And so it left him not being able to do all these things. And I'm like, well, how do you communicate? It was very interesting. So I drew it or whatever. Not that I haven't drawn for my life. Drew the idea, and I was thrilled that he would do whatever and was able to participate in whatever way.
yeah, yeah. That's really incredible and really true it's really, really, really interesting. Yeah, yeah. So the other thing that I certainly want to know, being that I'm a bilingual English French guy, is so what do you know about sign language and either deaf people with either a capital D, lower D, or blind deaf in other countries? So internationally speaking, what's going on with deaf people in other countries?
That's a great question. First of all, with American Sign Language here in America, the problem is that it's not universal. So what you have in the book on one page, A and B next to each other, are not the same. There's multiple ways of doing it. Nobody's right. Nobody's wrong. So I ask people to watch the whole shebang and then ask questions that people can do a similar kind of an idea. But I ask the students to pick one style, not 50 different ways. They can't grade people that way, right?
Okay, right.
So, you have all these different things.
So
So
in other
in
words,
another country, so let's say Puerto Rico or somewhere else, the sign language is different. So what they learned is somewhere else, they're going to have to unlearn it and start all over again.
So in other words, you're almost conveying to me that somebody from a different country, not only would they sign differently, but they would sign with their country's accent, with their country's mannerisms, right? So how does that work? If somebody, let's start with two English speaking countries, our country and England. I've spent a lot of time in England. So what do you know about that? How would somebody in England sign differently? And kind of, can you express an example to me of a different nuance between those two sign languages?
Well, I don't know. I've never been to England, quote unquote. But the thing is that I can give you examples in America. So let's say our area, the tri-state area, we're very fast and things like that. Whereas let's say somewhere else is a slower pace. So the signing could reflect on that. There could be area signs, like for example, when we do different signing and it could be 10 minutes away or not. And there could be different ways of people doing things and emphasizing certain things in an area idea of how they live. It could be anywhere really.
So in other words, now you can tell that I'm obviously not a proud New Yorker like you. I'm from the South. So in other words, somebody from my part of the country would sign. You're saying they would almost certainly sign more slowly than someone who is from New York or from the Northeast. In other words, they probably would.
Right.
Yeah.
Our lifestyle here
right.
in tri-state area is faster than, let's say, somewhere else. But everybody's different.
Sure.
So let's say, for example, I'm hanging out and we're signing at whatever speed we want. But, I still prefer a slow to medium pace, not ultra fast ever. But let's say you're in a classroom setting, or let's say you're hanging out at a party and now your interpreter friend comes along and doing full sentences and doing the hand placement and body language and grammar and all those things correctly instead of just hanging out at a party. Then it becomes a little bit different. And then same thing in a classroom. You want to have like a slow to medium pace, not ultra fast, because still want people to be able to see what you're doing, especially if you're teaching them. Wouldn't you do the same thing in speaking French, depending on the levels?
Yes. So to clarify slightly, what I teach is English as a second language. I do not teach French. I could and can and will if you want me to, but I don't. I teach English to those who learn English as a second language. Sometimes I get French students, though. Many of my students are French. That is fine. And yes, I do have to speak English differently. The difference is that sometimes if somebody is beginning, I will speak slower and use more direct sentences. And if they are more advanced, I will speak slightly more quickly. But I think the rate that I speak here to you, Jen, is the rate that I would speak really normally. I mean, I try to speak at a normal conversation place. Yeah. But normal to you and I, well, what's normal? I don't know. It's just how we naturally talk. So I think probably you're kind of saying that signing is the same way. You would just sign normally at a normal conversational pace, generally speaking.
Yeah, nice, medium. But there are people who are going to go ultra fast.
Right.
My preference is a nice pace.
Or also, I think a lot of it is obviously context, right? If something urgent is happening in the deaf person's life, they're going to sign a lot faster. If they need help, they're going to be signing much faster.
Ultra fast. Let's go. Get to the point. Right.
Sure. And that's more than understandable. Right. So basically, though, I mean, if somebody doesn't, I mean, I guess you cannot really answer because you probably don't know a whole lot. But if somebody doesn't speak any English at all, but they grow up like deaf, like say a French person, so then how do they, I mean, I know you can't really answer, but how do you think they would sign? What do you think?
It would be different, but I would hope let's say somebody doesn't know any English and somebody signs from America and somebody signed from somewhere else, that hopefully that they can communicate to some extent.
I mean, do you think, I guess what I'm intellectually wondering is it possible for a deaf person from France to use signs slowly and be understood to a deaf person in America? Or would it be like an American who doesn't speak French at all? Is it two totally different things, or is it two things that are different but similar? What do you think?
I don't know about French, but say with Spanish, which is more common.
Sure.
But the thing is, let's say they speak Portuguese, and somebody else speaks Dominican. So you have it's like a whole different language. Like some of them are really, really fast. Like we have a 60% Hispanic population.
Sure.
So you have a lot of ESL people. So the thing is, it depends on the pace. It depends on their background. Everybody is different.
Right. Absolutely.
But when they're going to speak in English, it's going to be a normal pace.
Mm-hmm. So it would all depend on the native language of that country, the culture of that country.
Right.
What about another fun one that linguists like to talk about? What about idioms? What are some does ASL have idioms that other languages don't have? In other words, nuances, idioms, or quirky little things that you can do in ASL that I couldn't do in English.
Well, what they don't have is like, the, all those kind of pronouns or whatever.
Or articles, you mean?
Yeah.
So
Article.
there's no articles, in other words. So
Well, they
you just
have and they have that, but then you have what's facial expressions and they
right.
confirm every single thing when they're having conversation. So it's very different. So you have a lot of areas. You have facial, you have body, you have hand, grammar, you have hand placement. There's a lot that goes into them.
Sure, sure.
So
So in
yeah, I
other
would think so.
Yeah. So in other words, you're saying that being a fluent ASL speaker is not only being fluent in ASL, but being effective and appropriate at reading, understanding, and using nonverbal communication. So it's also about the facial expressions that coordinate with the sign, right?
Right, because if you said in English, hello, how are you? In ASL, the word are is not written down. It's written hi, how you. In other words, so the word are is your eyebrows going up. So it's shown on your face.
Okay. Okay. How did these things develop? Like how did they develop ASL? How was it invented?
I don't know how it was invented, but I do know something very interesting that, Martha's Vineyards in like the 18th century. They went underground and they were, that used, because you had a lot of deaf culture and history. So you had the people, the protesters who thought that they should be oral. And then you had the people for ASL. So they wanted to like smack them and not allow people to use ASL. They would like punish the children. And it was terrible. So if Martha's Vineyard didn't happen, I don't think that ASL would have continued. They went underground
Hmm.
and they kept teaching the ASL. And then they had philosophers, Gallaudet and Clark, and all of the things I would say that developed from all of that. But they did have French and they went to France and England and all these other places, and then they developed ASL. So I would say that's how a lot of it was created. But the thing is, that a lot of philosophers did not believe in it. And so if they didn't do like, they had like an Ireland idea, like everybody was the same. So if you were a blacksmith, you were a school teacher, everybody was the same. So in this place, everybody spoke sign language. So they weren't considered different at all. You would absolutely love that philosophy.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Really, really deeply fascinating. Yeah, okay. Well,
People, I mean, they didn't have accommodations.
right.
And that was in the 18th century, like we do. But my whole point is that I thought it was a beautiful thing that, it's almost like H.G. Wells when we were children, how they wrote a book on, like everybody was the same. I mean, it would be a very boring world. But the thing is, I always have my students compare the 18th century Martha's Vineyards to current, like how would somebody be treated if they had disability? So like, growing up, children are really mean and teachers, they don't care to understand disability. But as you get older, you would hope that people would care and learn and help. And then they have accommodation today that they never had before. And you have to fight really hard for them every day.
Right, right. Yeah. And with every passing year in my life, I'm more and more aware of the importance of accommodations. When you grow up with a disability, it doesn't really occur to you. And then when you become an adult, it starts to kind of click like, oh, that's actually really important. So yeah, that is a really deeply important thing. Yes, definitely. Well, that's all. Everything is really, really fascinating. So your class, right, that you're teaching at the community college. So, I understand that you want more work, and I think out of this episode, you hopefully will be contacted by somebody, and hopefully you will get more work, hopefully. But your class at the community college. So, what classes do you teach, and why does somebody need to take your class apart from the fact that you're obviously a great teacher? But in addition, how does that work? Why does somebody take your class?
Well, I think I stand out more than other people because I have disabilities myself. So a lot of the people sign up for me specifically, and that's what I've always believed.
Right. Uh-huh. So
And
here,
I want them to learn all of these things. Some people have never been exposed to anybody in their whole life that had a disability. So now sometimes, there's students who have disabilities. We have 11 blind students on our campus. Some, I think one or two have a cochlear implant or whatever, but sometimes these little 17-year-old kids, they need, as we get older, we learn. So by, being exposed to different type of people is really important. And I emphasize all of these things in my classroom.
right, right, absolutely. Absolutely. And specifically, what is the class? Is it an intro to ASL? What is the class exactly? Yeah.
Well, I teach American Sign Language Basic Level 1 and 2, and then I did teach deaf culture as well.
Okay,
The
good.
hearing class when you give them culture, but I do culture all day long. I just put that into teach them that.
Sure. You interject, you inject cultural awareness into your teaching that you do as you go along. And that's true with any language, and that's true with me. The more I've been speaking French over the years, the more I have needed to learn the culture behind the language to communicate appropriately. And that's a very
Right.
subtle thing. The cultural stuff comes later after you master the language, Yes, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Really, really
Right. And
good.
I've had a lot of people over the years come to my book signing so then they could see a whole nother side of me too.
Okay, well, good. It sounds like there's a lot of sides of you. That's really cool. You're a character. You're a blast. Yeah. So, and if you don't mind me getting, really, really kind of personal with you, so how did you lose your hearing? I mean, if you want to walk through the accident, I believe you said it was a car accident that took your hearing, right?
Can we put it on pause so I can go to the bathroom for a second?
Oh, of course we can, of course.
On her.
Okay.
Okay, I'm back. Thank you.
Sure. No worries.
Okay,
Okay.
so the question that he asked me was about how in the world did I lose my hearing. So my parents told me that when I was 5 years old, I had a high fever. So that was the start of it when they detected it. And so then I wore one hearing aid for a while in New York. And then we moved to New Jersey and the teachers and the other not all, but most of the students, they do what kids do. They make fun of what they don't understand. So I really didn't like it. So what I decided to do from like the seventh grade all the way through the end of high school, I chose not to wear hearing aids at all. I was always a very excellent student and the hearing loss was a lot more mild. And then in community college, the classes were way harder and you had to kind of hear your teachers and stuff like that. So it was a big difference. So anyway, as I was going through, and I got like, mild hearing aids then, mild. And then years later, when I was attending Rowan, I wore hearing aids then in my undergrad, and then they had the accommodations and things like that. And then when I attended NYU, then I had a car accident in 97, a head-on accident, and that
Ooh
caused
la
hearing,
la.
to go down a lot and a lot of injuries in my body. So basically it caused a disease called Meniere's, which is vertigo and headaches, and it's very hard to deal with. So anything like fast or too much, I have to take like breaks, so I don't go on like the Parkway or something like that. Different things, I chose not to drive. I drove all my life, but then when that happened, I said, this is ridiculous.
Sure,
So
understood. Yeah.
anyway, so then the hearing went down. It was really hard because when I went to school, which was a very long time ago, they had the Desert Storm and they war, and then they closed New York, so we couldn't get there. It would take like 5 hours, and then the whole class would be gone. I'm like, this is terrible. So anyway, so the hearing went down plenty and had like these terrible attacks, and I didn't know what to do with myself. And so I finished grad school, and it was an extremely difficult class because I had to really look into myself and learn about hearing loss and hearing aids, because I was always very rebellious and very quiet and very shy, unlike who you see me today, very assertive. I try to be, not in every situation, but every minute of the day, right?
By the way, you're also very endearing. You have a very warm and endearing character, by the way. You're so sweet. There's something so
Thanks.
sweet and strong and you have such a person. You're a personality in a person for sure. Yeah,
Thanks.
absolutely. Yeah.
It's nice of you to point out. So for a lot of years, I couldn't work. I saw who my true friends were, so forget them. So anyway, we gotten married in the millennium. And, so it took me a few years to find out what was wrong with me. I gained weight and what was going on. So it turned out that I had developed hypothyroid, which means the thyroid levels were off, hormone. And then after I got that in check, which took years to find out what was going on, why was I gaining weight, what was going on, then the next thing was I was developing all these massive food allergies, and my parents figured out that it was celiac. So I had to go back to do it all over again with the dietitian and nutritionist and doctors. It was really hard. So anyway, in 2007, I went back to work, and I worked in one college. I taught psychology, did admin as I described, tutoring for disability people, stuff like that. And then when that ended, then I published Here I Am. And then I was recruited by my current school. It took 2.5 years. It was very difficult. Now, we had plenty of other things that happened. So anyway, and as the years went by, the hearing went down from these lovely attacks. There was no way to predict it, or on, different medicines. But anyway, so I lost initially 88 pounds, plus or minus 20 pounds every year. And now I deal with other things. I have back and neck injuries. So when I go to doctors, they have no idea how to handle me. And I also have stage 3 knee arthritis, which is very painful to be
Oh
able to
boy.
deal with. And most of these doctors have no clue, and a lot of them are getting older and retiring, and these other new people don't know how to deal with me. So anyway, it's all a learning experience.
Yeah.
So basically I use the hearing aid, and I use the FM when I need it. Let's say a one-on-one, that's really important. And I have a cap telephone and things like that, what I need. And sign language stuff is usually at work, not in the house. So it depends on what the individual needs. So then basically you hear the book, Making Positive Changes. You will hear or read or whatever you're doing about how my life changed, and how when we moved here from the other town 3 years ago, of how I wanted to make the accommodations in my home. I mean, like I want to have like a relaxation room and I have like a waterfall with rocks and I hold the rocks and I like to say, I am enough, like something motivating, just pick anything you want for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day to relax your brain, whatever it is that you enjoy. It's really important. And I enjoy my job, what I'm doing, teaching, but I also go to bookstores and, I do motivational disability awareness seminars and I'm looking for more work teaching, tutoring, or customer service. It could be a lot of different type of things. It doesn't have to only just be teaching, but I'm really good at it. But I really like helping people because why? Because that helps me grow as well as a person.
You're 100% correct. If not 100%, you're 1,000% right. And that's why we do this to help others. And I was ignorant to the fact that I was under the ignorant impression that there are far more positions for ASL speakers and ASL users than there actually are. But you were
No.
telling me over the messenger that actually no, there's not nearly as much paid gigs for ASL as I thought there were. But I think you will find your niche, and I think once we get this episode out publicly, I think you will find that hopefully more people will in fact start reaching out to you more and more.
I
So
also
yeah.
was on the front page of the paper. 2 days ago, I had a reporter interview me in my
I
area.
thought you did. I thought you did, but then when you sent that, then the next thing you said is disregard. So I was confused on whether that actually happened or didn't happen.
Oh yeah, I don't have the online version for people to read.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. But you were in fact interviewed by a newspaper, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I don't know why you
really.
told me to disregard it, but okay. That's interesting. Anyway, yeah.
I don't
Interesting.
have a live version of it yet, but
Ah.
I have the papers to hand out to people who live near me.
Oh, okay. I see. I see. So and what types of things did the reporter ask you? Like what was the framework of that interview? Yeah.
Well, that's a great question. He asked me, like things like, what am I doing? What do I want to do? What am I getting from it? And he made several quotes about it. And actually the guy who's in charge, this other gentleman, and he's going to be at the, book signing and he has his own place. So the people were really nice. So in a different place in my area.
Okay.
We would do
Cool.
that one again. I liked the people. I liked the environment. It was small. It was like in an artist community, very tiny room.
Yeah, that's
The
really what you
idea
need.
is,
You really need you need the grassroots level. And then and these grassroots interviews are the interviews that will actually help you the most. I mean, any interview is a help, depending one moment, depending on who interviews you. Any interview could potentially help you, but the interviews and the communities that are most impactful and most caring are at the grassroots level. And that's how it's always been. The grassroots are always the most important. Absolutely. Yeah.
well, when I
Mhm.
did this book and the other one, I was hoping to be able to read X, Y, and Z, and then people would write or talk about whatever style. And I was hoping to make like more of a career, but I don't understand why nobody wants to do that. To be able to have like a seminar or webinar or whatever. And then I say blah, blah, blah. And then I would say, well, what do they learn and how do they want to go about this? And how do they want to make small and large term, long term goals?
Right.
That's what I also wanted to hope to do to help people that way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it takes Jen. It takes a while. Unfortunately, success takes a while, and I've noticed it here. And the most impactful thing or the most subtle thing is slow and steady wins the race.
True.
So, unfortunately, I hope I want to give you success, but if it's quick success, it's not the success that will last. The
Right.
success that will last is the success that will come with blood, sweat, and tears, the slow type, the sluggish,
Baby.
oh, baby steps,
Yeah.
precisely that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like I feel that the reason why I did the audiobook in addition to the books, that way I'm reaching a whole nother population and I didn't want to leave anybody out of my hard work. That way they can hear the audiobook and or they can read it and listen. You have all kinds of people who
Right.
learn differently, which is good. Otherwise we'd have a very boring world.
We
Everybody.
would indeed. And certainly there's somebody in my audience and they know who they are. Yeah, it's not Aaron, it's somebody else who's not here. But so in other words, somebody could physically buy your book in print, right?
Yeah, I have the books available at home.
Oh, okay. Good, good.
$25 soft copy mailed in the United States, signed. And
Okay.
the audiobook is $18 through me. All I could do all that on PayPal, but I would provide my information privately to you.
Yeah.
Or they can go on Amazon or wherever books are sold.
Oh, okay. So somebody I know could go to Amazon.com and find your print book that way too, right?
Yeah, it's under my real name. And the books are called Here I Am and Making Positive Changes.
Okay, I think I have somebody for you that actually will buy the print one. Yeah, and anyway, that's all really good, really really good. So a couple more things before we let our other podcast buddy open his mic. So where have you traveled to outside of the United States, Jen? That's one of my questions. I always love to talk about travel. Where have you traveled to outside of America?
Well, when I lived with my family, we went to Canada, actually, as a little girl. I remember that. We went to Quebec and Montreal.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So that was
Absolutely.
out of the country, and I don't think we went anywhere else out of the country. We traveled within the United States for vacation to Vegas, to Hershey, Pennsylvania, places like that, different things. Florida.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Really, really, really good. Really, really good. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's really, really, really good. So what is a hobby that you, Jen, do that I would never guess you did? What are some of the crazy stuff you like to do when you're not teaching?
Oh, when my father was alive, he taught me about saving money. And so we would always do like coupons. But the thing is that it's so hard to find and save any money. But so what I do is I go online and I call up the companies and I tell them to mail me coupons because today is ridiculous prices. So you really have to try hard and get things on sale. And when they do go on sale, to try to get a manufacturer and store coupon, and then they limit
Mm-hmm.
you to only 4 coupons or take 0 coupons. The things
Hmm.
are, I've never seen such high prices for things in our life. So we have to try to be frugal and make things last or do without things. And even with medications, to call up a patient assistance program, samples, doctors and coupons. I've done that all my life. So it's really, and then also I take things and repurpose. Let's say I do surveys and I take that and I repurpose the money for other items that I require. I like doing that. I have a dog named Princess, as I mentioned. She's now 5. I like doing agility. I had that with lightning also. That's a lot of fun, doing weaving with the poles. Just, taking care of her. And there's a new thing that we do. It's called puzzles. Have you ever heard of it for a dog or a cat?
Vaguely,
So
yes. I
what
think
they
I did
do
have a
is they
puzzle.
have a puzzle and you better really stay by the animal or they'll destroy the whole thing. So what you do is you put a food or treat in each thing and then they have to use their sense of smell and they move the pieces around. So in other words, the more engaged the animal is, the less trouble they're going to cause. And so I enjoy that.
I recall that, but that before my guide dog, I did have a guide dog, by the way, from Guiding Eyes for the Blind, and
Oh,
she passed she passed
oh,
during the pandemic. But before she passed, at the way end of her life, I would play with the puzzle with her, and she really liked that at the end of her life. That was
yeah,
very fun. So I do know what you're talking about. Dogs love those puzzles.
yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Jen, I always like to turn the microphone over to you towards the end of a great conversation. And let me tell you, this has been fascinating for me. I don't know about you, but I've been fascinated to hear you. So what are some questions? And when I say what are some questions, I really want you to make me sweat. What are some questions you really want to ask about Aaron Richmond, Aaron's opinion, my life? What do you really want to know? Ask me anything.
Well, before I ask you any questions, I would like to say that I really enjoyed being on your show. And
I
you
really
asked me a
appreciate
lot
that.
of really hard questions that made me think, which is good. I like to be able to show my true colors, so to speak. That's who I am.
You showed him. You showed your
Some
true colors.
questions that I could ask you. Do you enjoy working with the student and do you get inner growth from that?
I always enjoy working with the students. Me being able to use both of my language skills, English and French, is fun for me. It's entertaining. You
Mhm.
keep hearing stories from all over the world, and I never stop learning. And that's why I do it, because you never stop learning when you're a teacher. And that's
Right.
really powerful and really touching. And I've touched so many souls. In the right way, with all the problems, with everything that's not right in our world. I try to do right. I tell people this every day, and I'm not telling you because it's not true. I'm telling you because it is true. I'm also in the Lions Club, and we say, and I forget if Aaron's in his club or not. I don't know if he is. Somebody in our podcast community is a Lion, also like me. But we in Lions, and as you know, they help the deaf, they help the
Mhm.
blind, people with diabetes.
Classes.
The most important thing is we say we serve, right? That's the most important thing.
Mhm.
So as long as you're serving people, as long as you're doing right, then right will be done to you back. And I don't necessarily believe that just philosophically. I truly believe it that when you help others, you will be helped. So the
That's
smallest things we
true.
do will come back and help us in the most subtle and beautiful ways. And that's truly what I think. What else do you want to know?
Well,
And then
how
yes,
did you
yes,
lose?
Aaron. After she asks this, yes, because you unmuted. That's totally fine. But yes, go ahead, Jen. Yes. Uh-huh.
How did you lose your vision, and how does it affect you today? And what kind of accommodation did you use for yourself? Everybody is an individual.
Well, and especially when the individual's name is Aaron Richmond. I'm the dictionary definition of individual. So I was born blind, as I said, with glaucoma. I also have a congenital heart defect. So I was born with a condition called Peters Anomaly Plus. Now this is known as Kabuki's. And this affects the eyes and the heart. It can also affect the brain. It can also cause many, many different things. And so I was born that way, born blind. I've had many corneal transplants. I had an open heart surgery when I was 3 months old. I have eating problems. I have all sorts of health problems. So for me, as I said, as I alluded to earlier today, when I was a little boy, the school system where I lived in Maryland refused to provide a teacher of the visually impaired. And so my parents went to due process, and things like that. And now and this is the same TVI who I mentioned who also is deafblind. And, she had a dog, and, now I think she lives in my state, or lives one of the states near me. I don't know. Hold on. We do not always keep in touch as well as we should or could. But I suspect that she is a listener of the program. Some listeners are very,
So she's
yeah,
deaf blind and she was TBI, helping the blind.
correct, correct. So she's a very fascinating lady. She has ushers.
Okay,
Um,
so you can be blind and deaf from it. Yeah.
Yeah, so she has ushers, and then she had a TBI when I was a teenager, and she had to retire early. She's also had a blast of a life. She's never been on the show before, but she's also somebody who would certainly appreciate this conversation. Somebody who I suspect is secretly listening. They just don't want to tell me. Yet, regardless, after my parents went to due process, she came to our school system, and she worked with me from the age of about I don't know, from when I was like in fifth grade all the way up until I was like in 11th.
So what happened when you were a little kid? Did you have a teacher?
So what happened initially was that when I was a really little kid, we lived near Washington, D.C. We lived in Virginia.
Mhm.
And we lived there until I was about 5. And then when I was about 5, my father's job changed and we moved to Maryland. And when we moved to Maryland, there was a TVI in the community. This TVI who came before we got the one who had the dog. First of all, I have to say, I you know I have to be cautious about what I say because she has passed away. She passed away years ago, so she's no longer with us. But she was somebody who meant she was a good lady. She was a very nice lady. She meant well, but she did not truly know enough Braille. and enough of the skills that we've been talking about today to actually be able to help a blind person really get where they need to get in life, I think.
That's all they had to offer you at the time.
That's all they had at that time. And what happened was I'm just kind of racking my brain and kind of remembering as I'm remembering. And when I was around the age of 8 or 9, I recall that it was at the end of the school year. And I'll make up a name for her. I'll call her Miss Harris. Her name started with an H. We'll call her Miss Harris. And Miss Harris came to me, and I was, not to brag, but when I was a little boy, I was a sharp little kid, just like I am now, very intuitive, very connected to the world, and I was very aware of things. So she said, "Hey, Aaron, you did well this year, man." And I vaguely remember it's kind of cute that I remember. She pulled me aside towards the end of the year one day. It was spring, weather felt good. And she says, "Aaron, do you know what the word resign means?" And I said, "Yes, Miss Harris. Yes, I know what resign means." And she said, "Well, I'm resigning. I'm no longer going to be your teacher, but I wish you well." And she, stuck out her hand, shook my hand and said, "Okay, man. Okay, kid, have a good summer. Be well, do good in life." And I genuinely think, I truly think and truly know in my heart that Miss Harris meant well.
Yeah.
She was not a bad lady at all. It's just, to really be a TVI, you have to really know a lot of stuff at a very subtle and deep level, like we were saying today. There's a lot of subtlety. And I think Miss Harris just sort of got into the profession without knowing everything she needs to know, which is a huge problem, as you're more than aware.
So what accommodations as an adult do you use?
Well, so as an adult, I use voiceover. I have a brand new iMac, as you can, tell. I just got my new iPhone, so I'm very fluent. I'm very fluent in voiceover and the use of Siri in my life. I do have usable vision, but it's certainly not enough to drive a car, obviously. So I can't have a driver's license. I can't drive a car. I can't read a print book or things like that. One moment.
So would you use a driverless car ever? I'm inventing that. Do you think that is good, or do you think it's a crazy idea?
I think that a driverless car will, in fact, become part of our future. But I don't think it's here yet. I think we have a few years of waiting before those driverless cars
But
come
they
into
just
my
announced
garage.
that they want to do that in Newark Airport. I don't know exactly when. And that's the craziest airport over there.
I mean, I think that it'll be something that I will experience, but I just don't know when I will experience it. That's all.
You want it to be out a long time.
I don't think society's there yet. I think that it's something that will happen in my life, but not quite. We're not quite there.
What other accommodations do you use? Braille?
And then I use Braille. I'm a Braille reader, and I use a cane. And I would say that those are my accommodations. So anyway, yeah, great question. So basically to kind of recap it and kind of circle back to kind of conclude that part of the story. So then for like fourth grade, all of fourth grade and half of fifth grade, I did not have a TVI, and my parents went to due process. And then I'll never forget it. And then in February of my fifth grade year, this lady, whose name also starts with an H, we'll call her Miss Henry. Miss Henry came in and she said, "Hi, Aaron, I'm Miss Henry." And, I got to know her and got to understand her life and her story, which is very unusual and very, very interesting too. So and then she got me all the way to 11th grade. And then by the time I was in 11th grade, she needed to retire because she had a TBI and things like that. And by the time I was in 11th grade, I was able to get myself to graduate. And then I went through university, which was very trying and very traumatic. I'm not saying it to joke. I literally have PTSD about the town where the university was in. I literally will not even drive in a car in that town for a variety of reasons because of the trauma I faced during my university days, which were very interesting days. But then I got out of that, got into teaching. I've been teaching for 10 years now.
Oh, did you graduate?
Yes. In 2014, winter of 2014.
And what was your degree? Teaching?
International relations.
Bachelor's in international.
You got it.
Are people listening to us as we're going?
No, this is pre-recorded.
That's what I thought.
The only people in here are the people, me, you,
Right,
and
three of
Aaron.
them.
Right, just us three. But then when it's broadcast out, it's out on all the platforms and everywhere, and on YouTube and TikTok, everywhere you can imagine or not imagine. So, I think that really kind of sums it all up, and I think we're both doing great, and I think
This was some interview. Wow, wait.
Well, you know what? You're some kind of a Jennifer Beilis. Wow, let me tell you, you're a character. You brought it. You're a character. So of course we want to turn the microphone over to our other podcast buddy, Aaron Kolonowski from Aaron's Journey. Okay, go. What are your questions, Aaron? Go for it, man.
I don't see him. Maybe he went somewhere.
Uh-oh. Did we lose him?
Oh, there he is. He came back to
Oh, Aaron, unmute. You timed that perfectly. I said, please unmute and ask your questions. Go.
Okay, so Jen, I was wondering, from your experience as a teacher,
You're talking way too loud. He's gonna talk louder.
Sorry. When it comes to the many students you've dealt with, what is some of your memorable students you've worked with?
So
Some memorable students that I work with.
Right. So he asked, sure. So he asked, who has been your most memorable student that you've worked with?
I've had plenty of them over the years, but the things that stand out are, let's say, I had one student who had 5 kids, and she was crying to me in the city. And
Right.
she didn't know how to, her and her family had no clue how to communicate with her deaf son. So I gave her the resources, HLAA, and really sat there and listened to her and tried to help her and give her encouragement. And so that way her and her family, she would learn and teach them to be able to communicate with her son. And so by the end of the semester, which is 15 long weeks of knowing them, she was like, oh, I got a truck. Oh, we got an apartment, I got a job. I was like, wow, I really helped this lady. Things like that. Like people have different problems. Those are the ones I'm really going to remember that I helped so many people.
Yeah. And those are the conversations that really stick with you, Unfortunately, the people who are happy all the time don't really stick with you the same way as the student who pulls you aside after class, nearly crying in tears about some problem at home. I mean, it's really sad, but those are the people you actually end up remembering. And those are the people who you truly help, the most,
Try. There was plenty of them that had mental problems or their family did. It was really hard.
Yeah. Well,
but I think it's so important to listen. Most people really couldn't care less. I don't know what they would be a teacher for.
Well, I think that's a very subtle thing that I think a lot of people become a teacher because some people become teachers because it's the easy way out. Of course, that in essence is the biggest lie that anybody can believe.
I don't believe that at all for a second.
Nor do I.
Like you and helping. Most people don't care. That's this world that I want to listen and make a difference.
You did.
And I do. I can't reach everyone, but you can reach a lot.
The subtlety here is if you reach the people who care, you succeeded. That's the subtle thing.
Even if you help one person.
Because you know what we say at Aaron's Opinion, even if you help one person today, you'll help 1 million people tomorrow. And it's true. And that's our saying. Help one today, 1 million tomorrow. And it's absolutely the case.
So does the other Aaron ask more questions?
I don't know, Aaron. Do you have other questions?
He's not sitting there. He probably went away. He let you take the lead.
Okay. All right. Well, why not? Well, in that case, hold on one second. Okay. So in that case, Jennifer Beilis, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, how can you be reached? Let's kind of wrap it up from here.
Okay. I'm on Facebook. You can find me on there under my name. You can find me on LinkedIn. There's plenty of ways to reach me. You can email me. You can reach out to me, PM me on Facebook or LinkedIn. And my books are on Amazon and practically every book site that there is. Barnes & Nobles, Draft Digital, Ingram. Penguins Parks, plenty of things. And my audiobook is on Spotify and plenty of other ones, not on Amazon, but it's on Spotify, the biggest one, and a couple others. And all the products are available through me using PayPal. So when you contact me, I have plenty of soft covers books for sale. I do have a couple of hardbacks, not that many for Here I Am. And I have plenty of books available at home.
Yeah,
and
we'll definitely
audiobook as well. You can buy it through me or go online.
You know, I'll definitely, I'll tell you about it later, but yes is the answer. There's somebody, in my audience who wants to print one. And I'll tell you, I'll connect, we'll kind of network, but for sure somebody needs, but yes, I'm definitely going to say, hey, I need one of those print ones, and I'll explain it a little bit. It's a little bit complicated. Anyway, all right. Well, in that case, Jennifer Beilis, you are a blast, and you're so sweet and so kind, and so you're doing the right thing. Not only are you knowledgeable, but you're doing the right thing, and that's something I respect and salute. So thank you for what you do. Don't go anywhere, by the way. I got to talk to you for another 30 seconds about something else. Okay. All right, everybody. She's Jennifer Beilis. I'm Aaron's Opinion. And by the way, thanks to our podcast buddy, Aaron from Aaron's Journey, for joining us as well. We'll connect soon, everybody. Until then, everybody, be well, keep podcasting, and don't forget, help one person today, help 1 million people tomorrow.